All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about a kind of secret war being fought over innovation, a war that might just solve one of the biggest economic puzzles of our time.
So here's the thing that just doesn't make any sense. We're pouring more money into research and development than ever before. We have more researchers on the job than ever. So why is our actual economic growth slowing down? Why are we seeing fewer new companies pop up? It's a real head scratcher.
Economists actually have a name for this. They call it the innovation paradox. And it's basically a story of two major trends that are heading in completely opposite directions. So on the one hand, you've got all the inputs for innovation just skyrocketing. R&D spending is up, the number of researchers is up, and their salaries are definitely up. But then on the other hand, the outputs, the results you'd expect from all that investment, are going down. We're seeing slower productivity growth, that's TFP, total factor productivity, which is really just a fancy way of measuring how efficiently we create things, and we're seeing fewer and fewer new companies being born. And look, we're not talking chump change here. Right now, researchers are earning a wage premium of over 14% compared to other folks with a college degree. So yeah, the market for this kind of talent is absolutely on fire. But the real question is, what are we getting for it? Well, a pretty fascinating paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research offers up a possible answer. It's a little bit wild, a little bit unsettling, and it's called defensive hiring. Okay, so what does that actually mean? The core idea is this. The big, established companies, the incumbents, they're not just hiring researchers to dream up the next big thing. They're hiring them to basically corner the market on talent. By driving up salaries, they make it so expensive that a new startup can't even afford to hire the people it needs to get started. Yeah, this really sums it up perfectly. The goal shifts from playing offense, creating something new, to playing defense, just blocking anyone else from creating something that could challenge you. You're basically trying to starve potential rivals of the oxygen they need to even exist. But for this whole strategy to actually work, one thing has to be true, and it's a really critical economic clue. The supply of talent has to be what's called inelastic. Right, so what is it that makes this defensive strategy so incredibly effective? What's the secret sauce here? It all boils down to this concept of an inelastic labor supply. And put simply, it just means that even if you start throwing a ton of money at the problem, you don't magically get a ton of new researchers. The talent pool is, well, it's pretty fixed. It doesn't expand quickly no matter how much you're willing to pay. And just look at this number. It is absolutely wild. The research found that for every 1% you jack up researcher pay, the actual supply of researchers only grows by a tiny 0.14%. This is the linchpin. It means big companies can afford to drive up wages knowing full well it won't create a big new wave of talent that startups could then hire. And this isn't getting better, it's actually getting worse. Think about it. Research fields are getting so specialized, right? It's not like you can just become a quantum computing expert overnight. So the supply has actually become about twice as inelastic in recent decades. And that just makes this defensive hiring strategy even more powerful. Okay, so that's the theory. It's a compelling one for sure, but does the evidence actually back it up? Well, the researchers went and dug into the data to find out. And this table really tells the story. When the big incumbent firms spend more on R&D, you tend to see three things happen. First, you get fewer new companies entering the market. Second, those big companies get to stick around for longer. And third, overall productivity growth for the entire sector actually goes down. But here's the real kicker, the part that ties it all together. Look at that last column. All of these effects are way stronger in industries where the research labor is inelastic. I mean, the authors of the paper pretty much say it all right here. The data shows this really clear connection. In the industries where it's hardest to find talent, that's exactly where the big companies' spending has the most powerful competition-killing effect. Okay, so let's pull back for a second. What are the real-world consequences of all this? What does it mean for the economy as a whole, and is there anything we can even do about it? And honestly, the picture it paints isn't great. You end up with an economy that has slower technological growth across the board. The giants get to live longer because they face way less competition. And sure, a small group of researchers gets a nice pay bump, but the whole system just becomes less dynamic, less exciting. And this just gets worse when you consider that big ideas are already getting harder to find, which just makes playing defense even more tempting. So if this is a problem, what's the solution? The paper looks at policy, and the takeaway is pretty stark. On the one hand, if you give subsidies to new companies, you seem to fuel that creative destruction that drives real growth. But on the other hand, what happens if you give those same subsidies to the big incumbents? Well, you might just be giving them more ammunition to play defense, lock out competitors, and actually slow down innovation for everybody else. And all of this really leaves us with one huge lingering question. In this secret war for talent, it seems like the winning strategy is to just play really, really good defense. But in an economy that needs new ideas and disruption to thrive, who's left to play offense?